Welcome to the Charity Matters podcast. Mr. Rogers' mother said, always look for the helpers. I'm Heidi Johnson, nonprofit founder, lifelong helper, and your host. I've been interviewing the helpers for a decade with my blog, and I'm so excited to finally be sharing these inspiring conversations with our new podcast. Join me as we learn the challenges and stories of innovators, entrepreneurs, and modern-day heroes who set out to solve the problems of humanity. Today, our guest is Kyle Stefanski, the founder of Rhonda's Kiss. I'm really excited to share his amazing journey of service and our inspiring conversation. Let's get started. I'm just so happy that you're here today, Kyle, and I'm really excited to learn about Rhonda's Kiss. I think, like I said, I think we have maybe a little bit in common, and I'm excited to hear about your journey. But before we start, just tell me really quickly, what does Rhonda's Kiss do?
Sure, absolutely. So Rhonda's Kiss raises money for the non-medical expenses tied to cancer. It's, keep your lights on, food in your fridge. So wigs, childcare, rent, mortgage, groceries, rides to and from the hospital. You'll see a lot of cancer patients, either not going to the hospital in the first place because they can't afford the ride, or stuck at the hospital for hours after their meeting with their doctor, and the doctor comes out at the end of their day, and they're like, well, what's going on? You need a ride? It's just, all these hidden costs that people don't even think about. They're just focused on the cancer itself.
That's amazing. So, and I'm aware of some of those costs, having spent a lot of time at certain children's hospitals, and the cost of valet is mind blowing to me, that they put families through this. And I can't even fathom, like, you can't even afford to pay to park, and you're dealing with a child that's sick, or you're dealing with cancer.
Oh my gosh. It's honestly, like I said, that cancer becomes the focal point. Everyone's so focused on that and focused on the treatment and the emotions and the support surrounding it. There's no education on the support system, how it should go, what it should be. There's no outlets, really. And so, it's trying to help educate people, trying to get them in that headspace and know that, look, there's a little bit of hope if you're struggling. No one ever had this outlet before. We're one of the first in the country, as I, looked around and to see who was doing the work we were doing. We started with the Cleveland Clinic, and they just, they were so amazed at the fact that we wanted to get back to this, because they said they've been kicking around, all the research is there, but all these patients not coming in or being stuck, or having eviction notices, and, having to live on the streets and being stuck with cancer, all these things that they couldn't do. As doctors, they can treat stuff, but then outside of it, you still feel terrible because the person is going through so much. So,
right.
We offer that ray of hope, and it's there.
And so I'm guessing that the nurses and the doctors hear these stories, and then they come to you and say, hey, you're not going to believe what we just found out. How do you get your patients, so to speak?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we do is, when we start off a partnership with a hospital, like, Cleveland Clinic was the first one, but you're familiar with the hospitals out here. So City of Hope or Cedars-Sinai. We'll talk to them. We'll talk to the fundraising department. We'll say, look, we want to set up this program. It's what we've already had in place in other cities, and we want to adjust it to what works for your hospital and your health system.
Right.
And this is the guideline that your social workers will go by to give out the grants to people. So you'll be able to identify this person speaking certain language. Okay, let's get him to, the social worker, can offer up, here's the grant for Rhonda's Kiss type of deal. So we don't actually personally get involved. We do everything we can to raise the money. And
right.
Even the hard part for me is because the HIPAA laws, it's hard to connect with the patients that you're raising the money for. You're out here doing all this, but that's been the hardest part for me of this whole process, is because, it fuels, it energizes everybody. It brings everything full circle of what you're doing, and
Right. And so much of the work, I mean, when people don't think about nonprofits, but really what calls us to get inspired and connected are those personal stories. When we hear about a single mother who couldn't pay her rent, who's diagnosed with cancer and has 2 children, and her car breaks down and she's trying to get to treatment, none of us can open our checkbooks fast enough to help that woman. But when you're not allowed to have access to that information and that story, even in the most vague ways, it becomes harder for you to raise the money. But tell me, before we even get into some more of the challenges, how did this come about? I mean, obviously, things happen that trigger action like this. And I've had the privilege of, as I mentioned, interviewing a lot of incredible people. And the sad thing is, most of us, myself included, who've started nonprofits, I would say, in my opinion, 80% have gone through some sort of loss and want to turn into something positive. And I would say 20% of people have maybe had something that's maybe a near miss and a moment of gratitude that they decided to start one. So tell me the backstory of how this came to be.
Sure. We can go, I guess we could go as far back as to how I was raised, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So I was raised in a philanthropic family, and my mom was, stay-at-home mom because there were 5 kids, and my dad was a banker, or is a banker. And so, with the schools that I went to, with the work that my parents did, I was helping out at soup kitchens all the time. I was, watching my parents, give gifts to certain places and get involved in the community. And my dad has always talked about how important it is to have a sense of community. And that's, what he does in his professional life. And so he was a great model for me. My mom was a great model for me. The schooling even was great, modeling, after school kind of stuff, which was fantastic. You really get to go into the inner city and just sit there and really kind of connect with people. And I actually love soup kitchens because you can connect with the people. You can talk.
Right.
It's just it's a casual thing and a beautiful thing at the same time. And so I had that in me, and I knew that whatever I did, I always wanted to be philanthropic. I just, those connections that I made with people when I was younger, like I really got to see what was out there and where needs were, and how to help, how to just join in if I needed to. And I always wanted to kind of like start something of my own, right? And I know my mom had wanted to do that herself, and she was on the path of doing some philanthropic things herself personally, not just her and my dad. And so part of this is kind of carrying on, her dream to continue that in her name and her honor, which is so important to me. And before this happened, I was looking at, helping out with water, because water is so needed all around the world.
Right.
Especially, I have connections to people over in Ghana. And so I wanted to start to do some wells to some of the villages from the main cities in Ghana. And I had that kind of program going. I had a name for it called Hydro Coalition. And we had the website, and that was starting. And that was a beautiful thing for me. And then this happened with my mom, and it just,
And what, I mean, I know a little bit of the story, but share with other people if you're comfortable with what happened to your mom.
Yeah, absolutely. My mom was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in 2014, August of 2014. And, very abrupt. We thought she needed hip surgery. So just caught it by accident, through, I think there was an x-ray or something that it had caught it, and she needed to get a biopsy. And so that came back, and basically, pancreatic, and anyone who knows about it has gone through it. It's brutal if you do. And, it was very quick. No one in my family was prepared for it. So 2 months to the time that she was diagnosed till she passed. And yet, it just took us so off guard. I mean, we were completely in shock, and it's
absolutely.
It's a brutal way to end anything. And so,
Did she want you? I mean, obviously she'd been philanthropic and doing things, but did she communicate any of those wishes to you before she passed, or did you guys kind of come up with the idea?
I know it was there in her heart. Like, she would love for something to, not something necessarily to come out of her death, because
right.
she's so focused on the cancer itself and the fear of pancreatic and what everyone says and talks about. I think we were all so focused and didn't have any education on anything.
Right.
Just like, okay, can we save her? What's happening? And then, each time it got worse and worse, and then it was a slippery slope. So I think it more so came about when the family came together after, maybe a month or two after, like, trying to figure out what had happened and trying to say, we need to turn this into something. And, we sat down and we said, there's so much money going to cancer. Why not put some money to something that we can actually tangibly feel is affecting people?
Right.
And, this is money that once it's donated, it goes to that partner hospital, and the social workers, they start executing grants right away as soon as that money's in there. And so it's a fantastic thing to that level.
So losing someone, and as I, told you, I lost my mother really suddenly. My mother was in a car accident, so I lost my mother very suddenly. And so I understand the shock, the grief, the loss, you can't even believe this has even happened. It doesn't even seem real, especially with 8 weeks. It's just so fast. So, you started talking really within a month or two about what you can do, because I think it's such a crazy time. When anyone who's lost someone realizes that people come out of everywhere and people want to help and people want to support you, and you've never realized how loved your family is until you've gone through something like that. So what did you, how soon was it, did you start to say, like, we're just going to do this? We don't want anyone else to go through this, or was that kind of part of it?
Yeah, that was, we were all in different parts of the country too when it happened.
Oh, wow.
So, like, I'm out in California. I have a brother who's out here. We have a sister who's down in Texas, then another sister in New York, and a brother in Cleveland. So we were there for, the funeral and
right.
And afterwards. But then we kind of went to our separate ways, and we all grieved kind of in our own way. And we came together and kept talking on the phone. And then, I think that's probably spearheaded mostly by my dad, as that's what, he does. He tries to honor people, or tries to turn things into something. And that had been right along the spirit of us. But it was like, how long were we ready to do something?
Right. Absolutely. It's just grieving is such a draining process, and to take, and you're almost unfunctional in some ways, some days, and starting a business, which is what Rhonda's Kiss is. It's a business. Starting an organization takes a lot. And when you're running on empty, I'm just always fascinated with how that kind of got going, and what your initial thought was, and did it kind of, just how you started to get going, I think is just like, and how you ended up kind of in the driver's seat.
Yeah, absolutely. This kind of came together. There was a very nice connection with the Cleveland Clinic, because that's, where she was treated. And, we had done some work with the Cleveland Clinic in the past. And so we were familiar with them. And obviously the kids had gone there plenty of times. And so we were connected to some people over there. And there was one woman who we kind of sat down and we talked with. And we were explaining how we didn't want to give money to research. This was, like I said, it was a good couple months of grieving.
Right.
And in all honesty, it was trying to make sense of it. It helped us kind of push the grieving process forward, if you will.
Right. Absolutely.
Because, making sense of her life, trying to, like I said, have that come full circle a little bit, and make us feel really good. Because I honestly, it's so hard with how fast she went that, we were still sitting there trying to grapple with it. And, I think this was that key moment that helped us move forward. It was more so like, well, we have to start a business, but also it's at the same time, it's like, well, we're honoring her. This helps, for the next step for each of us. And so,
Right.
we worked with a woman over at the Cleveland Clinic who, had been kicking this idea around, with non-medical expenses for a long time. A lot of them have been. And, she brought it up to us, and I think that was one of many situations that we could have, tried to start or try to work on. And then obviously the research was put in front of our faces multiple times. And this was something that made the most sense to us, and especially, to me, because as soon as we were going to honor my mom in anything, I knew that what I wanted to do was take that voice, because I'm out in Los Angeles and, I'm doing acting and producing. And I want to take that voice and amplify it, because I'm working with, names who can build the awareness.
Right.
And to me, that was super important. And so especially once I found out what we were focusing on and we all agreed on it, and this was the path moving forward, all my other siblings have their own careers as well. And I saw how I could mesh this easily with what I was doing in Hollywood. And
so fantastic. That's so great. It's beautiful.
It couldn't have worked out better in that respect. And so I'm super thankful. And that's why I knew I had to jump on it. There was no hesitation for me at all. It was philanthropy, honoring my mom, and, building the awareness of what this is. Once the cause is there, this needs to be heard. It's not, not many hospitals offer this. There are a few more that do, now that since we've started in 2016, but this is a brand new thing.
So great. And I'm a super fan of City of Hope and Cedars-Sinai. So amazing. I'm glad we're getting some representation in LA. So you mentioned a little bit earlier about HEPA, but I don't think people realize how many challenges there are in starting a nonprofit and in starting a business that, relies on donations. It's a hard business model. So what do you think your biggest challenges are?
Biggest challenges. I mean, look, raising money in general, that's always the biggest challenge, the reality is we initially did our first Rhonda's Kiss in Cleveland, Ohio. We did it at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And it was kind of like this big, recap of honoring my mother, and all of our friends who have been family, who've known us for our whole lives, were there supporting. We raised $600,000,
wow.
First event, just like that.
And was that in 2016?
2016, yes.
Wow. Yeah. That's fantastic.
So
you have a lot of friends.
We do. Luckily, we, I guess, we're good to people, nice to people, and want to do the right thing. And when people see that, I think they identify with it.
It's pretty phenomenal. So, I mean, it's also really hard work. Running a nonprofit it's not as easy as people think. It's a business. It has all the complexities that any business has, all the fun things like taxes, all the hard things like asking for money and creating marketing materials, and all the stuff that you have to do for getting great stories like you talked about, and gathering and sharing those stories and building a community. What fuels you? Like when it's really hard, when, the bucket's heavy, you're the end of the line. I know you have your father and your siblings, but it kind of falls on you as executive director. Yeah. What makes you keep going on those days when you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? How am I going to make this all happen?
No doubt. Hands down, I was going to even add to that last part of how we started in Cleveland, right? And I took it on. And I'm really, really growing awareness in Los Angeles. Really difficult city to do that, because the competition here is insane. The amount of nonprofits here.
There's 30,000 in Los Angeles, just in case you didn't know. 30,000.
and they're all asking for money, and they're all, it's a competition at the end of the day. It really is.
Right.
So I went from a place where everybody knew who I was and knew my name to a place where nobody knew who I was, and I had no name, and I had nothing. We're just starting this nonprofit with, the minimum relationships that I had, like just a few, right? And so I had to basically build that up out here, help build it in Florida. And like I said, we're going to New York this year, in April. So I'm trying to build it nationally. We started, but the name's bigger. So, at the end of the day, like it's been since 2016, I've built the Los Angeles base up to what it is now, which is, I would say, pretty strong, pretty solid. We're able to do some decent donations out here, have some really nice events. But to your point, at the end of the day, this is a business, and I hadn't run a nonprofit before, and so there's a lot to learn as you go. And, at the end of the day, it's a non-for-profit, and most people are used to for-profits. And that's a whole different business model. It's a completely different. You have to stick to percentage.
100%.
There are percentages that with the IRS that people don't think about for profits. There's just a lot at the end of the day that you're putting your time and your energy and self into that it doesn't necessarily get reflected, and that's okay because you're doing it for the right thing. And how do I keep going is, and I've said this before, I think even in a speech, is that hospital floor where my mom passed, the Cleveland Clinic, is stuck with me so deeply. Like, I will never forget that feeling when I walked away from her after she had taken her last breath, and I just walked by myself through the hallway, and I just felt the energies of each room as I wanted to remember every piece of it.
Basically what you're saying, though, is that when it's hard, you think about your mom, you think about those other people that you serve, you think about how you felt in that moment, and that's what keeps you and reminds you every day and keeps you grounded and grateful and moving forward, because this work is hard. It's not easy work.
No, it's not. Like I said, you don't have to live with it. You don't have to have it emotionally bring you down, but it will never leave. And so I go to bed. It's a thought of mine. When I wake up in the morning, it's the first thought of mine. That is something that I live with, and everything else, circles around that. And obviously family comes first, but that helps mold me as a father, as an example for my son and my new child who's coming. We don't know the sex of it yet.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you so much. But these are really important things, and being in Hollywood and being in this industry itself, to stay grounded and to continue, to have philanthropy come first, and usually everyone's careers come first. So it's really important for me to, as a full human being, to keep this where it is. Rhonda.
Well, I'd say your mother did a very good job raising you, and that you have that priority, because I think if everyone in LA thought that way, LA might be a little nicer town. I think that that's, at the end of the day, I really believe we're all here to serve each other. That's really what we're here.
Yeah.
And to use whatever gifts we have to help each other. And I can't but help think that your mother has been guiding you through this. I'm sure there's been moments of, I call them moments of grace, but moments where that she's there, or she's guiding you through some of the challenges, because there's things that happen. There's things that happen you can't explain sometimes, and somehow it's when you're on the right path, and that you should keep going forward when the work's really hard.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've had those moments. So what success have you had? And I hate the word impact, because I feel like nonprofits, we're business, and we have to have, people want to know their return on investment when they're making a donation. They want to bet on the right horse. They want to know that you're doing great work with their money's going to something fantastic. But impact doesn't always have to be a number. We've raised this much. We've served this many people. It could also just be a moment or a story, but what would you say that you think the impact of what you guys have been able to do in 5 years?
Yeah.
I mean, not a very long time.
Yeah, definitely. So from a number standpoint, we've been able to donate over $1.5 million since 2016.
Wow. That's fantastic.
Yep.
That's huge.
Through all of our partner hospitals, the Cleveland Clinic, Florida, Cedars-Sinai, and City of Hope, and soon to be Maimonides in New York City.
Wow. So you guys are going to be at 4 hospitals.
We are, going to be at 4 hospitals. The Cleveland Clinic, Ohio, and Florida, they're kind of the same.
Oh, Florida, right. Okay. They're all connected.
Yeah, they're connected.
So if you could dream any dream for Rhonda's Kiss, what would that be?
I mean, I guess that question, it ties in a little bit to what we were talking about before is like kind of the impact that you have. The impact of Rhonda's Kiss, I would love for Rhonda's Kiss to be, national, for everyone to understand this need. I mean, that for me, like that was always a big piece is I see how important this need is and how hospitals are kicking it around, but they don't have the money for it. It's straight philanthropic dollars that help this stuff out. And so if you haven't created and you're not aware of that you need to create this kind of program, then that's the problem in and of itself. So I'm trying to get at least regional, if you will, with Cleveland, Florida, LA, and New York. But if we can really get, much more regional, get it into many cities where people have access to, because we have people reaching out to us as the awareness grows saying, how can I get access to this? And it's if you're with that partner hospital or you can get to that partner hospital. So, you have to be connected to that. And if we were connected to many more health systems and hospitals throughout the country, this would be more accessible because it's not the same issue in different countries. So, yeah. Well,
and I think also with healthcare, which is so, when we started spiritual care to provide chaplains, we were, the hospital knew that they needed more chaplains, just like the hospital knows in your case that they need their patients really, they need spiritual care and their patients need a ride to the hospital and their patients need to pay rent. But the hospital is basically saying at the end of the day, but we're a hospital. We just fix people and get them healthy. We have to keep our lights on and our surgeons paid and our nurses paid. And why we think that having chaplaincy and having all, valet parking and everything covered is great. We don't do that. And so I think it's really challenging when you're trying to create an organization, at least from my personal experience. The hospital loves the idea, but they just can't manage any more than they're already managing. And so creating partnerships with the hospitals is in itself a really interesting dynamic.
It's a completely interesting dynamic. And what I found, and I'm so proud of from a number standpoint, and we always talk about this, is the Cleveland Clinic, who we first started with, had 3 social workers in their cancer department working on this kind of stuff, right? Just 3 social workers. That is since we started this program and been donating and putting the money in there, that has since grown to 28. So 28 just because we started the program.
Okay, and that's an impact.
That's
wow.
An impact. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, that's fantastic. That's amazing because that's boots on the ground. That's person to person. Yes. What do you need? How can I help you? Let me hold your hand and let me take you through the whole process. Yeah. That's amazing.
Absolutely. So outside of the amount of people that we could help with the money, they were able to really get that infrastructure kind of set up. And so, and we're doing the same with the other health systems and partner hospitals, and we're growing these programs. And it's
well. Once you have one working model that's really working, to replicate it does become easier. It does double your your work and it doubles everything else you have to do. You've got to fundraise in 5 cities, and right. I mean, it's definitely doubling your work, but it does become easier once you have the system in place of how to replicate it and what worked and what didn't. But then each hospital is probably its own. I was
just going to say each hospital is kind of like they like to do their own thing, so you do your best to just say, this is what was working over here,
Right.
We're happy to work with you on however you want to set it up. But every hospital that we spoke with is looking for these dollars. They need
I believe that.
They're very excited about it.
Well, and I think that sometimes it's frustrating because there's bridges that are down between the patients and the funds. The hospital may collect funds for whatever, but they don't know how to funnel it and how to do that. And you've created that bridge that didn't exist. And I think that's something that's really exciting because hospitals do like to replicate working models. Sure. And hospitals do talk to each other and they do say, hey, Cleveland Clinic, I hear you got this really great thing and we'd love to see what you're doing over there. So I think that's really exciting. So what I can only imagine in the past 5 years, some of the life lessons that you've learned, but what do you think some of your lessons that from this journey? I mean, here you were just like doing your own thing and all of a sudden your mom gets really sick, your life slipped upside down, and now you're running this organization and having probably pretty incredible life experiences along the way, good and bad, because I think with philanthropy, we have the privilege of seeing the best in people and generosity and kindness and amazing. And sometimes we see things that are a little surprising too. So what life lessons do you think you've learned since starting this?
Man, honestly, there are so many life lessons that I've learned. Like I spoke before about, being a father, being a good example. I think that this is something that, I would like, and I think by osmosis, my children will, completely understand what it means to be there for another human being. And, I honestly, when they grow up knowing Rhonda's Kiss and who grandma was and all of that, and then, seeing what their father did with something like that, I think that's been important for me because at first, I was a bachelor just trying to honor my mom and figure this out. And there's more to it. There's next steps, there's next phases, and it's continued to keep me so humble in a city that can drag you down in the wrong ways.
Yeah. For sure.
That, no doubt. I've learned, I knew a lot about people and the human condition because I was always very interested in that and very empathic, but, you really learn what kind of makes people tick in what situations and what it's for and raising money. Raising money in general is one of the most difficult, the ask. They call
Amen.
it. Yeah.
Yes, they do. They call it the ask.
That's a life lesson in and of itself.
Yes, it is.
These building the relationships, and building them for the right reasons. That's, really trying to build our own advisory board, our committees, our, executive board, putting all these people together and not for profit, which everyone is used to. And they're trying to, just say, all right, well, what am I doing here? Why am I doing it here? And it's acclimating people to like a human style of looking at things. Like this is not a capitalistic style of jumping into things. We're here like looking at the human, doing it for the human, feeling it. And certain people, have come on and wanted to help and feel weird about the ask itself. And it's just, it's not about you asking this person specifically. You're asking for someone who's in a hospital bed, someone who is, at the end of their rope. And that ask for you is like the lifeline right there.
Right.
Think of it like that. Like you're really, truly, with every effort that you have, that's why I go to bed and I wake up, we got to do something today. We got to, something's got to be accomplished each day. And it is, and we move forward so well. So I don't know that I gave specific life lessons that they were,
they're all there because it's all part of it. I think that there's so many takeaways. And I also think when you're in the nonprofit space, we're so busy. We're juggling so many balls, as you mentioned, with our board members and our donors and our events and our marketing materials and people we have to meet and all of these things. But we don't always stop and think about, wow, take that pause to kind of really say, wow, I really learned something there, or wow, that really just happened. Because we get kind of paid with humanity, I like to say.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily do this work for the money, but we get to see the best in people, and we get a front row seat to it. And there's something pretty special about, as you said, the human condition and being able to witness it.
Yeah.
So what do you think your mom would say if she was here right now? What do you think she'd want to say about what you're doing in this work?
Yeah, I think she'd be proud. She would definitely be proud. That's something I think about all the time. I think
she is. I think she is. I think so.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know why that hit me emotionally that time, because I think about this all the time, but, I really think that she would be proud, of what this is at the end of the day, what we're really doing and finding that need. Because that's what it's all about, is the way that any of our systems are built up in countries. There's always people who are falling by the wayside. There's always people who need.
Always.
And so it's really finding that need in whatever area it may be, because it's there. It's absolutely there. And I would recommend to young kids who are interested in philanthropy, who are just curious about it, just go help out in the soup kitchen, in your local soup kitchen. That's a great way to just get started. It's always happening. You get good interface with who you're helping. You can understand it and easily move from there. I mean, that's the truth.
Well, and I think, and don't you think, when you don't realize it, but when you start giving back, you may not start giving back. You might just do it to do it, or do it because your school's telling you to do it, or do it because your parents are telling you to do it, or do it because everyone is doing it.
Yeah.
But it becomes an addiction when you start realizing how amazing you feel when you help somebody else.
Yeah.
There's something happens and you can't kick it. It is, the more people you help, the better you feel, the more joyful you are. There's a secret sauce. So I always say to anyone who's having a hard time, go out and help somebody else, and you're going to feel so much better. It really, it's the truth. I mean, it definitely is the truth.
This process has taken me on such a spiritual path as well. And so, a lot of it has been opening my eyes, because I mentioned before, we live in this very capitalistic, hyper-capitalistic society. And that's a big reason why we don't see the people in front of us. We don't connect. There is no human condition to really feel, because we're moving so fast and worried about ourselves. And so, like you said, when you feel that gratitude, that's a part of, our spiritual side of how we're supposed to be there for others. We're all in it together.
Completely. Well, I know for a fact that your mom is definitely guiding you through this. And I think that the work you're doing is so brilliant and so needed. And I'm so excited that you guys are expanding and growing. So tell us, how can we support you? Where can we donate? Where can we volunteer? Where can we find you?
Absolutely. All right. So you can go to our website, www.rhondaskiss.org. And there's a donate page. So just hit the donate page, and we have options for you to donate at any level that you like. It explains what that actually is doing for the human being, whether it's getting them a ride or a wig, or you can throw a larger donation that just helps in general. And so that's where, I recommend people to get more information on us. And if you'd like to donate, please go. We also have our social media. At Rhonda's Kiss on Instagram and Facebook. And then there is my Instagram, where I'm always, doing Rhonda's Kiss stuff as well, which is Kyle_Stefanski.
Stefanski is a hard one to spell. I know how to spell it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That is so great. Well, I really can't thank you enough for sharing the story, and your work is so beautiful. And I just think of the beautiful legacy that you continue to grow for your mother. And I think that that's just such a gift for the world. And thank you for sharing it with all of us, because there's no greater gift than leaving a legacy of love, and for someone that you loved. It really is the greatest thing. And we're so grateful that you shared that with us. So thank you.
Thank you. I really, really appreciate those words, like more than you could ever know. And that means a lot to me.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Charity Matters podcast. I really enjoyed talking to our guest, Kyle Stefanski, about what it takes to start a business that changes people's lives. I think his comment about being a role model for his son and the humility and gratitude he has learned from service was so inspiring and true. To learn more about these modern-day heroes, or if you'd just like to reach out to us, visit us at charity-matters.com or connect with us on Instagram at Charity Matters. If you enjoyed our conversation, we'd really love it if you shared it with your friends and family. Remember, together we can make a difference, one small act of kindness at a time. See you next time.